My name is Elaine Maldonado. I'm the Director of Faculty Development at FIT, and I know the teachers, but I don't know as many students as I wish I did. And my job is to help your teacher do an even better job in the classroom. And we're hoping an event like this will give them some great ideas for the future. I'm very excited that we have a panel of women who are not from inside FIT, but they are leaders in what we like to call design-related technology. Once upon a time, many of the fields that you're in relied on magic markers and spray adhesive. And those days have really changed. Certainly from the time when I was in school. The four panels that we have, one is Deborah Weiner. She's a creative director at one of the Omnicon's advertising agencies, specifically in the area of pharmaceuticals. We also have Leah Dickey-Garoppolo. How was that, Leah? She is a licensed practicing architect who also is a professor at CUNY, and she specializes in construction drawings, and I think that would be a very interesting field for all of you. We also have Olga Patel. She's the senior manager of Open Innovation, correct, at Mattel. And I know there are many of you here from toy design, and her experiences, I expect, will be extremely interesting to you all. And finally, we have Crystal Picciano, and Crystal is with the as a global integrity manager at the Gap. So I think all of these women are going to share some really special experiences with you and talk to so many of you who are going to be entering very similar workplace, right?
Reminds me that Crystal's was alumni of the year in TEM.
Oh, there you go. How the day is going to start? I thought I also want to thank. I don't know if Griselda is here yet, but a little bit later on, I'm going to introduce Karen, who just spoke up. She's the co-author with me and co-project director with me with National Science Foundation grant here at FIT that is seeking to infuse sustainability into the design curriculum and also to help improve outcomes for women in STEM. And STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And this is a very technology-centric event today. Design and technology have almost become one, as I'm sure you all really know. We also, we want to thank the National Science Foundation for their funding, and we also want to say a big thanks to FIT's Diversity Council, which has been very generous with their funding on this event. So I thought we'd get started, and I will come back up and kind of guide you through the day, but I thought the first thing that would be really great is that if you would just take some time to do a little bit of a round robin at each table. And I think each table has one professor from, I can't tell you which department you got, right? But, to just take your time and do a round robin and introduce yourself and the department that you're in. Also, a little bit later, but in case you want to take a peek at it during these first couple of minutes, in the folder that you have, in the back, is something that looks like this. It's not the one with the graphics, with the leaf and all, it's this one. These are questions that might guide you in what you want to ask our panelists after they finish speaking. So you might want to take a look at this too while you're having your conversation right now. So I'm going to leave you to yourselves for about 10 minutes, get to know each other. If you have any questions, just raise your hand, I'll come running over. Okay? Alrighty, so before we get started, I would like to introduce two more people. First of all, I'd like to introduce Griselda Gonzalez. She is our Affirmative Action Officer and the Acting Director of Compliance, and she oversees the Diversity Council, and we are very thankful to her for her belief in us and for helping us produce this event today. So, Griselda.
Thank you, Elaine, for inviting me to join you today. It's always a pleasure to come to events like this. And on behalf of the Diversity Council, I welcome you all to Women in Design-Related Technologies, learning from real-life stories. I would also like to welcome and thank our guest panelists. Sorry if I butchered your name. Excuse me. Leah Dickey-Garoppolo.
Very good.
Olga Patel. Crystal Panchano and Deborah Wiener. We look forward to hearing about your career experiences, and I'm sure that our students will benefit greatly from your guidance. Now, this event is partially sponsored by an FIT diversity grant. FIT President Dr. Joyce F. Brown created an annual diversity fund of $15,000 to encourage the development of educational projects, scholarly research, creative endeavors, and professional activities such as this one that promote the Diversity Council's goals of diversity, tolerance, and inclusion. A maximum of $5,000 is awarded for each winning grant proposal. So if you're interested in learning more about FIT's diversity grant and how to apply for one, please visit our website at fitnyc.edu/diversity grants. And we have flyers and also email blasts that we send out continuously, so you can also look out for those. We have 2 grant cycles coming up, so there is time to apply. We have November 1st next fall, and also March 1st of 2013, so you're welcome to apply for those grants. I'd also like to thank Professors Karen Pearson and Elaine Maldonado again for all their hard work in not only writing the grant, but also bringing it to fruition. So thank you and enjoy.
Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce my partner in all crimes, Karen Pearson. Karen is professor in the Science Department, professor of chemistry, and we've done this project together and the projects that have built up to this. So Karen.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It's so exciting to stand in front of this room and see so many women with so much potential to offer into the workforce. So we are so excited to have you here and have the opportunity to let you be exposed to women who have been very successful in the ways that we hope all of you will be. Now, this project came from a bigger scope of a project that Elaine and I have been working on, but we owe great thanks to the Diversity Council for their support and encouragement for all of you. In the end, it turns out that women in design-related STEM have so much to offer, and we would love to see better representation across the board. And so this is part of hoping to help you be better prepared for that. Gina's making noise up here.
Utensil design.
She needs to make utensil design up here. But in addition to thanking the Diversity Council and National Science Foundation, who has been so excited to support design-related STEM, which is a new area for the National Science Foundation. When I go and present this work nationally, they are so excited to think about the fact that we are talking and working with people who are toy designers and thinking about what materials they're using and how they're using and what the strength of those materials are, because that is engineering in a manner that hadn't been traditionally included in STEM and has become part of really our daily life. So we are so excited to do that work. And without a great support team, this would not be possible. Celia Baez deserves excellent thanks for all of her hard work. She's going to be annoyed that I called her out, but she does so much to support this initiative and to support hosting of events for both the students and the faculty on campus. So she deserves a great round of applause for all of that. And just as important as all of the students in this room, we could not do this without our career department faculty partners. So excited to see so many people here from different divisions to show the scope of how technology really impacts all of the majors here at FIT, those in business and those in the design and textile areas. So I just want to welcome everybody and thank you all for coming, and that's all. Elaine's in charge of emceeing.
Well, I guess we'll go down the line here, and I obviously have spoken to our panelists ahead of time, and they're going to start out talking to you about the kind of work that they do. All 4 of them have made very impressive marks. They probably embarrassed when I say that. In fact, one of the things I noticed when I was arranging to have them come here today, they were so meticulous in asking information from me. So I think that's the first learning experience here. Not one of them just said, oh, okay, I'll be there. Every one of them, they asked me for details. They asked me for questions. Who's going to be there? And I think that this is the very first lesson that you can take from this. is that they're very careful and very professional in everything that they approach. And I'm hoping what they will tell you, and I haven't, I swear I haven't micromanaged them to this degree, but that they would just tell you the kind of work that they do, the challenges that they met along the way because they were women in male-dominated fields, how they overcame those. They might share some stories with you that are not too nice, but I think you might like to hear them and to hear how they handled them. And let them take their time, and then we'll go on to the question part. But let's start with Leah.
All right. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and it's a great honor to be here. My name is Leah Dikigoropoulou, which is the hardest one to pronounce. It's a Greek name. That was a major challenge, actually. But I am an architect, a registered architect, and I came here from a different country to become an architect. And the reason I became an architect is because I used to like to draw, and I used to like math. That was the two things I enjoyed most. Challenge number one was the boring part, coming into a strange country, miles away and going to college. And then after college, how do I stay in this country? How do I get a job? That was a hurdle by itself. I had to volunteer for jobs. I had to do anything I could until I got my citizenship. Now, once I became an architect, that was even harder. I'm a woman. I'm small. People don't take me seriously. I had to learn the hard way. Through small jobs, through small offices, through anything that I could get. Sometimes I wasn't actually paid because I was a foreigner and because I was a woman. Men made more money. It was the case. But I never gave up. And to this day, I still, sometimes I go, it's okay, I'll just do it for free. That's what it is. But it's, I'm trying to think. And, the other thing that's extremely frustrating is I like to draw. That's my major thing, and now we have computers. And it's killing me.
And they do it for you.
And they do it. No, they don't. But students do it for me. But it's like, why did I become an architect? Why did I choose this field? Why, if I like to draw, now everything's taken over by these computers, and I find my way. But technology is taking over. There's so many programs. I went to school. I learned how to draw by hand. Everything was done by hand, and now I'm back in the field, and I go, okay, you guys want computer drawings. Even the building department takes computer drawings. So I have to learn more stuff. And every day of my life, I actually learn more programs. I have to sit there and understand what's going on, and every day they introduce us with more stuff. And it's like, it's a never-ending process. So I think that's my story. I don't know if there's anything more you want.
I'd like to ask you, when you went onto construction sites, did you ever have any
absolutely.
experiences?
Oh, yeah. Oh, this is an interesting story. Actually, this is a funny story. I was pregnant. I was, it was like a week before, 2 weeks before I was going to have my kids, because I have twins. And I went on a construction site, and I had a fit. The drawings were drawn perfectly, and the contractor was not obeying me. So I said, you have to change this. And he goes, no. Well, the next day I went to labor. But, they don't listen to a woman. It's harder. You have to really do everything meticulously. You have to work extra hard. Because I was a woman, it was a challenge. They said, oh, you want, stone flooring here. No, we can't get it. And it's like, well, you did the bid. You got the job. You need to follow my drawings. And it is a challenge. You have to put your foot down.
Well, we're going to come back to you. So, Deb?
Well, I'm Debbie Weiner, and I work for a company called Harrison & Starr, which is a advertising agency that specializes in pharmaceuticals. So basically, we sell medicine to healthcare professionals. And I started out like Leah because I like to draw. And when I started in this business, because I'm a little older than some of the other panelists, basically we did do everything by hand. And it was very satisfying that way. But now everything is computerized, and it's a big challenge to know how to do your work really, really well, and then suddenly not be able to do it anymore because you have to do it a whole different way. But now it's every single thing, every piece of email, every communication, every design, it's all computer generated. And it's very different, but I think like in any kind of visual exploration, the medium gives you opportunities that you wouldn't have had doing it another way. So we used to do things that really were much more simple. I don't know, if you look around at the kind of advertising you see around, you see very complex images. Nobody would ever have been able to make those years ago because it would have been cost prohibitive. Now you can get it all out of a computer and put it all together, make it look just the way you want, send it back out. So it's really a revolution in how things are done.
And Deb, when you were, I know you and I had talked about some of the top positions were very hard for women to achieve. I mean, what was your observation over the years?
Well, when I first started working, actually one of the first companies I worked at was Maidenform. I'm sure most of you know the women's underwear company, and it was unusual in the fact that it was founded by a woman, and at the time that I was there was run by a woman, but most of the people in power were in fact men. And they had very different attitudes, and I'm not going to say they were just like the contractors, but I think they felt that women needed to defer to them. I think you could say that as a general rule. And women entering the workplace and pervading the workplace now as they do have really changed the whole tone and tenor of working. And people behave towards each other in ways that they didn't do 30 years ago because now they have to. And women have brought that change.
I think that you were telling me that coffee story.
Well, I don't know. I suppose it's a typical thing where, like nobody wants to be the one who goes to get the coffee. And I was standing in the kitchen when I worked at Maidenform, and I was a young woman, early 20s. And one of the district managers was there, and he's standing right next to the coffee machine. And he said, "Well, how does a guy get a cup of coffee around here?" They said, "Well, he gets a cup and then he goes and pours himself some." And I don't know where I got the nerve to do that when I was that young. But now nobody would ever ask the question the same way. It just wouldn't happen anymore because women have changed it.
Crystal. So Crystal is a graduate of MIT, so she's sitting up here now. So Crystal, why don't you talk about your job?
Sure. I work for Gap Inc., and I'm the Global Product Integrity Manager. With my job, I support all brands. I support Banana Republic Factory Stores, Old Navy, Gap Outlet, I already said Banana Republic, and Athleta, and Piperline. So within that, there's a lot of different divisions, Gap Kids, and then there's adult, and then we also have international. There are some Japan exclusives that we do, and things like that. In my role, I am more of like the techie type of person. I set the standards for the company. What I was telling them earlier was that I do use math pretty much every day in my job, and I have to explain it to designers and people who aren't technical, as well as the mills. I travel internationally and have to do sort of training sessions for our mill partners. One of the challenges with that is, in the United States, we kind of have more of a balance now where everybody is treated equally. Men and women are treated equally. Young and old are treated equally. It's not the same in every country. So in certain countries, and I don't want to say because I don't want to offend anybody, but in certain countries, the first question that I'm asked is, are you married? Do you have children? And if, on my last trip, I just had a baby, but I didn't have a baby at the time, and they were like, oh, so when you have a baby, you'll quit, right? And I would get emails from some of my mill counterparts, and they would say, you're definitely coming back from maternity leave. And within, the field that I'm in, my current position is the only position that I've held where my boss is a woman. I've never had a woman boss before, since I am kind of in, we develop different finishes. We make sure that we set the specs for our products. The example I was giving them earlier is tensile strength. You want to know the breaking strength of something. Our minimum requirement, let's say for 6-ounce denim is 50 pounds. Well, the mill has to not only meet that, but they have to be within a percentage of the spec that they gave us. So it has to make 50 pounds, but if they're giving us a spec and they're saying they can meet 100 pounds, we want to make sure that they don't vary from that too much. sometimes we'll get denim back and it's completely different, and they'll say, oh, well, we meet your minimum requirement of 50 pounds. Well, you told us you were going to give us 100 pound strength denim, which doesn't feel the same, doesn't perform the same. The specs aren't going to be the same. The fit isn't going to be the same. There's a million different things about it that won't be the same. So when you're trying to explain to somebody plus or minus 10% a mil requirement and the 50 pound requirement, it seems like simple math, but sometimes it gets a little tricky. And it's not easy also to build credibility when you look like this. I look younger than I am. I always get people asking. No, but
hold on for as long as you can.
I have people asking me. I had someone ask me one time if I was an intern, or how do you know so much? Where do you go to school? And I'm like, I don't go to school. I've graduated. So that's a challenge sometimes. The story that I was telling you was I had somebody who at a previous job. I had somebody tell me that I would have to work 10 times harder than anybody else to prove myself because I have big boobs and bleach blonde hair. So I was also maybe 20 years old at the time. I didn't even know what to do, so I went in the bathroom and cried. Which was not how I would react now. But when you tell that to somebody, and also it was somebody I kind of looked up to. I did the 3-in-1 program here. I actually did 4 years above state and then 1 year at FIT for the 3-in-1 program, which they don't really offer in the same capacity anymore as when I went here. But I thought that he was helping me, and we would do mock interviews, and he would read over my essay that I had to do to come to FIT. So I kind of looked to him as a mentor. And then when he said that, it kind of crushed me. And also I didn't really know how to react. I would kind of crunch my shoulders a little bit. I'm like, I don't want to stand straight anymore. And you shouldn't feel like that. I shouldn't have to wear, sweatpants and t-shirts and baggy clothes just to kind of feel that I'm going to be taken more seriously. So for me, I feel that, your credibility, I felt that my credibility and having past experience would help people trust in me and, my judgment. But a lot of times people will still say the same thing now. People will say, well, how do you know so much? But it's because I've done this certain job for 5 years, and then before that I had previous experience. So just building the credibility and not letting people say things like that to you and not crying in the bathroom afterwards, just knowing that person really, is just kind of ignorant if they actually think that. Mm-hmm. My brother looks exactly like I do. He has blonde hair. And I don't think anybody would ever say to him that your hair is too light. I don't trust your judgment because it's too light. So that was one of the things that I had to overcome. And, you kind of, for a while after that, I did feel a little self-conscious with my current position. I feel much more comfortable. There is, I do have a female who's a boss. And not that really makes any difference because my previous male bosses were also very understanding. The VP of our division is a man. And when I came back from maternity leave, the first question he asked me was, how's your life-work balance? How do you feel? So, he is very sensitive and, supportive. But, I don't know. Anything
Interesting.
else?
Yeah. Olga.
Yes. So, listening to all panelists before me, there are a lot of parallels that I can draw as well. I'm not from this country either. I'm from Russia. And I'm married to an American because I cannot stand Russian men. There's nothing wrong with the way they look. There's lots of things that are wrong with the way they behave. Because in this is a great country for bringing equality among men and women to this level. In other countries, the discrepancy is so much more. So when I had my 2 kids, I was expected to stay home as well. All my Russian relatives did not understand why is that my husband is working from home and looking over the kids, and I am traveling almost every week. Crystal mentioned that being blonde is not helping in the workplace, and that's correct, it's not. I've been in the professional career world for 20 years, and every time I've looked for a new job, I would cut my hair and I would color it darker, so it would be dark blonde or close to brown. You'll be surprised how much more credibility you gain and actually how much more money you get offered when you get an offer. Speaking about just my career flow, I came to this country to go to school, and because being a foreigner I didn't have enough that much money, I ended up going to a community college, getting a bachelor's of science in biology. And I really wanted to travel the world and go get animals to different zoos and have this romantic lifestyle. Once I graduated, I realized that I needed to make money. So I applied around and I got a temporary position at the Gillette company, which is now Procter & Gamble. And the reason I was hired, my boss was telling me later, was they had a stack of resumes, and technical temporary technician, a number of people applied. So they were going through the paperwork, and they came to my name, Olga Patel, and they got kind of confused. They're like, who is she? Olga Patel, who would have a name like this? Let's bring her in and let's hire her. And that's how I got my first job. Wow. So I worked for Procter & Gamble for 11 years, then went to work for Nestle, the large food company, then went to Mars Food, and now I'm at Mattel. The funny story, back when I was at Procter & Gamble, I was in my early 20s, my boss comes to me, and I was technician, I was formulating deodorants in the lab. And the way we would test deodorants was we had a hot room that had a temperature of 90 degrees. And the panelists, say it would be full of 30 men, and they would be shirtless. They would apply deodorants on them, and then they would put paper pads under their armpits, and then actually weigh them afterwards to see how much sweat was produced and how well deodorant worked. So panelists had to sit there for an hour or an hour and a half to get the process going, right? So my boss, who was a male boss, he called me and he's like, Olga, go in that room, a 90-degree room where there are 30 men, and talk to them for an hour and a half. I'm like, about what? He's like, doesn't matter, just talk to them. I'm like, but why? He's like, well, my theory is that men would sweat even more if a pretty woman was talking to him. I did it. And what I learned over my career is, yes, you get situations like this. And it's very important to understand how to handle them and how not to overreact. Because at the end, it worked out that I had a good working professional relationship with that boss. He wasn't sensitive enough to understand that it may kind of affect me. So I had worse situations than that throughout my career, and every time it helped to step back and kind of take emotion out of it, not to cry in the bathroom. And kind of evaluate what would be the outcome if you would overreact. Just an observation, during my 20 years of professional experience, I've seen women cry in boardrooms. There are situations where there's conflict in the workplace. I've never seen a man cry. So I've learned to modify my behavior, modify my speech to sound less like a woman, to take the emotions out of it, and to sound more like a man. And that's actually working. What else can I tell you? What also helps me is, just like Crystal, I have to work extra hard to gain credibility. Because once I get hired, I dye my hair blonde again and I grow it out. Because I like to look the way. What helps me to build credibility is I put extra effort into make sure that I sound credible. So working for Nestle, we were talking about different chemical compounds, and our material science people were mentioning that they were working with gauze. I made sure I learned in advance what that stands for, and I said, oh, you mean galactoligosaccharide? And they kind of paused like, yes. So things like this, I mean, the point is you have to put extra effort in. But it's important to realize in what parts of the career and what parts of the working environment to do that.
Thank you. Before I open this up to questions, I wanted to ask the panel just one kind of broad question. Especially if you can speak from some distance, has it changed? Has it changed over the years, or do you think things are the same, that nothing's gotten any better?
I think things have gotten a lot better for women. It's not that they won't encounter some kinds of prejudices in certain fields, it's stronger than in others. But I was a founding partner at the company that I worked at, so I grew the art department from the beginning. And one thing I noticed really early on is that a good thing and a bad thing when women would come for an interview. Generally speaking, they were much more prepared and they had much more experience and they asked for much less money. And I think that that's something that also has balanced out over the years as younger women have come to know that they're as valuable and not be afraid to ask for what's coming to them. But I think that in some fields, people prefer to hire women because they know that they're going to maybe work harder and try harder, not just to prove themselves, but it's just more in their nature.
Does anybody else want to add?
I would say that contractors, and I don't want to stereotype, but I think there's still a little bit of that stereotype, a woman doesn't know anything about construction, which is not true. We know a lot. It's just that we don't put things together, even though there are companies that are owned by women contractors, but we do know how to tell you how to put things together, and I get the feeling still that we're not respected as much. So.
Yes.
I think that there's certain questions that are asked to women that would probably never be asked to a man. Like my boss asking me when I came back, how do you feel? Do you have a good life-work balance? My husband had a week off after our baby was born and nobody asked him that. So, in some aspects, it's good and it's bad to be treated differently as a woman. I think that what I went through after I delivered our daughter is different than what my husband went through. So for people to ask me different questions is understandable, and to treat me a little bit different in that aspect. I would expect my boss to say something differently to me than my husband's boss said to him when he came back. So there are certain aspects where I don't know if it's horrible to be treated differently or to be asked different questions, but at the same time, like you were saying, that you have to kind of act differently and that you have to take the emotion out of situations. You don't want to be seen as a crying little baby and overreacting at certain situations. I had a coworker who was from a different country and he wanted my job, and we both interviewed for the job, and the reason I interviewed for the job is because they recruited me, and it was going to be my position, but he had worked there internally and he applied for the position as well and he didn't get it, and he treated me horribly afterwards, absolutely horribly. And where he was from, he was just like, I can't believe that she's making more money than me. I can't believe that she got the job, even though I was more qualified for the position than he was. And he actually ended up getting let go for different reasons, not necessarily ones that pertain to me, but I'm sure that was a factor. We would be in meetings and he would literally say, she's not right. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And when someone's saying that to you, and there was really no good reason for him to say that except he didn't respect me at all. And, he didn't respect me for several reasons. I got the job that he wanted and things like that. And you just kind of have to sit there and say, well, let's take this offline. We can talk about it and see why you think differently, why you think my take on this is incorrect, and then we'll come back to the group. And that's how I had to handle things. And it worked well for me. Clearly, the way he handled it didn't work well for him. So, but you have to learn from those experiences. Like, I didn't cry in the bathroom anymore. But, sometimes it is difficult. It's difficult to bite your tongue. And sometimes I think that if I were saying that to him and he were to react emotionally back, people probably wouldn't, look down on him, and he probably wouldn't lose credibility. But I felt that in that situation, if I were to argue with him, let's say I lost the argument, even though I was right, but in front of people, the way that I presented my side of the argument may not have looked credible. It's just not a good way to handle a certain situation.
So any other comments before?
Listening to you brought another example in my head. I think over the course of my work, the situation changed. Women are much more recognized now that a lot of companies go through personality testing, and it's just to see how the team's working together, how well they're working together, and understanding that if you have different personalities on the team, your team is functioning better. So, and with that, there is increase in understanding that women do think a little bit differently than men. They think about things more holistically, while men are thinking more linear. And then when managers start putting together teams, they look specifically, maybe not necessarily for women, but those who exhibit characteristics of how a female brain works. But what I found also is some people, just like in your example, some men are still on the level that below realization of sort of equality. And like I had at Nestle, I worked with Italian director, and usually it's foreigners, in my experience, who are coming to the U.S. and they still think back that it was in their country. And he would comment every day on, "Oh, Olga, you look beautiful in this green dress." And it's fine. I mean, I understand his background. He didn't mean anything more than a compliment. Maybe not necessarily appropriate in the U.S. work environment. So just, again, stepping back and understanding where people are coming from, and then how you would react to it.
Any other last minute comments?
Well,
okay, one more.
Elaine knows this story, because I think because I'm older, it was more overt when I was starting to work. And once again, back to when I worked at Maidenform as a young woman, the vice president of advertising came into my office one day, and he was standing behind my chair, and he ran his finger up and down my back. And I said, "Ed, do you want to know if I'm wearing a bra?" I was working for a bra company, and they did want to know. And it was right at the time when the women's liberation movement was starting, and people were burning bras, and they were very paranoid about the whole thing. And they said, "You've never seen a place where, I mean, men look at women's breasts all the time, but they really, really look at women's breasts there." And I said, "Well, it's been suggested to me that you might not be wearing one." And what they were doing was they were starting to make flimsy little bras for young women who didn't want to wear these contraptions to go with the new women's movement. And I said, "I'm wearing your bestseller. I hope that's okay." He would be fired for that now, for touching a woman and looking for that kind of information physically. Things have really gotten better.
Yeah, I think so too. I know Debbie was not sure whether or not she wanted to tell this story, but actually I'm very glad she did. Well, what I'm going to do right now is that I'm going to turn this back to you all, and I'd like you to think about some of these stories that you've heard, and I'm very interested in the questions that the students might like to ask this panel. I think it's an unusual group of women, and I think they can provide you with some very special guidance. So if you want to use some of the questions that we've given you, it's the one that has the little FIT logo. You're more than welcome to come up with your own. So I guess maybe we'll take about 10 minutes and pick someone at your table or a couple of people at your table who can pose the questions for us.